So it finally happened. Looked like the legacy media is about to go bankrupt. But before we get on to the main news stories, can I once again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you'd really like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. Got a few news stories for you today, and let's start off with the first one, and that is that the legacy media is about to go bust. You love to see it. And this comes on the back that IRL says that they are at risk of 1,000 jobs. And you know, this was all due to a sabotage of the business. But you know, according to them, it's not just a business, it's a livelihood. Funny how they give very little damns about other people's livelihoods when they defame them. They give very little damn about other people's businesses when they defame them. In fact, when they put other businesses out of business through fake news stories, they portray that as being a good thing. This is also interesting because the Daily Maverick, the propaganda piece known as the Daily Maverick, also says that it's on the verge of bankruptcy. And they're asking for government intervention. If you can't make your paper work, you can't make a business work, it's going to go bust. It's the law of business. You can't ask the government to save you, because if the government does save you, that means the government owns you, which means that the independence is gone. Although arguably, there is no independence with the Daily Maverick anyway. But you see, let's use the case in point of News 24. Here's a lovely journalist who gave a tweet saying, "It's such an honor to be a person holding people in power to account and exposing those who do wrong. Where's his Captain America shield? What a hero." The problem is, this is the same person who broke the Jan Bra story. Having doxed the person's real name, he then went on to basically fabricate a story without checking it. So it turns out, local superhero wasn't that super. In fact, he was kind of a stooge. Talking of stooges, let's move on to Herman Mashaba and his latest meltdown. So for those of you who are on X, you've probably come across Sir Albert, basically a little bit of a troll. He basically made a comment that Herman Mashaba was getting rid of the DA mayor in Swane because he was white. And to that, Herman basically said, "You'll never get rid of me as long as there's an unequal society, and I will make it a deliberate effort so that people understand why that is an unequal society." So what do you intend to do, Herman? Do you intend to sit there and basically race grift? And I, for one, would say, yes, he probably intends to do just that, because in a follow-up tweet, he then referred to himself in the third person. When a person refers to themselves as Herman Mashaba says this about Herman Mashaba, it's very, very weird. People who refer to themselves in the third person, it's just odd. But yes, if you actually look at the rhetoric coming out of Herman Mashaba's mouth, he's starting to sound more and more like an EFF member. In fact, if this was coming out of Herman Mashaba, Secretary General of the EFF, I wouldn't blink an eye. But apparently, Herman Mashaba reminds everybody this isn't 1948. You know, the start of apartheid. It's 2024, and you can't just insult him. Yeah, this is whining. This is seriously whining. And unfortunately, as we've previously said, that whining just doesn't look good after a while. Talking of whining that doesn't look good, how about the latest story from the ANC Youth League? So the Secretary General of that organization says that he warns of a revolution coming against white South Africans if the economy doesn't improve. Specifically, if industrialization is not achieved. Let us remind ourselves that South Africa remains the most industrialized nation on the African continent. But you see, his argument was the reason he says this is that the South African economy remains in the red. He says that this is all due to the private sector, who, he quotes, he says, basically has committed treason against South Africa for failing to transform the economy. But you see, it's so difficult dealing with stupid people, because he fails to understand something. The key levers of power remain with the ANC. A black majority government. And that black majority government has put in place a lot of processes that favor black entrepreneurship. Why blame whites? You're promoting the black industrialist in South Africa. Let us not forget that if you are a white and you choose to come to South Africa and set up a business, you must give 30% of your business away to someone. Let's use the case of Elon Musk with Starlink, which will be the next story. So 30% you must give away. But if you're a black person who comes to South Africa and sets up a business, you've got to give away nothing. So arguably, if two people start on a blank slate, a black individual has to give away nothing, but a white person must. He has to give away 30%. How's that fair? That sounds actually like racism to me, against the white guy. Except, you know, it's not, because, you know, historically disadvantaged individuals and the usual BS stories that they give everybody. But you see, if you then go and you put a lot of laws in place, things such as potentially the expropriation without compensation and deflation of money, and you make it very difficult to hire and fire people, And then on top of that, you control all the state-owned enterprises, which means you control who's appointed to them and how they work in those entities. If you then get things like failures in the electricity grids and the ports and all the transportation networks, if water starts to decline because nobody's managing the water, that means that for you in an industrial plane, it becomes very difficult. Electricity often needed for everything that involves any form of industrialization. Not just electricity, water. And South Africa is a water shortage country because our water recycling plants currently don't work. So clearly, you see, what we've got here is an ANC government that's broken everything, and that breaking of everything, including the introduction of rules that are business unfriendly, needless to say, many individuals in business, including business units in South Africa, have said underneath previous administrations, the ANC was incredibly hostile towards business. They put in place processes and laws and legislations that made it impossible for business to thrive. So now the consequences of that, many years later, was that the economy was floundering. But yeah, it's the white guy's fault, because the black industrialists, which the government pays money to, let us not forget that the government gives vast sums of money, billions, to black industrialists. They don't give that to white people. So what you find is that there's an existing white economy, which the ANC inherited, and has then imposed significant sanction and burdens onto. That economy hasn't really grown. The black economy hasn't really gone forward because of forms of government degradation, infrastructure degradation, and, to be frank, wholesale looting. We've all seen the headlines. And whose fault is all of this? Yeah, it's the white guy. This is what we call stupid people logic. And this, my friends, is why the ANC is in decline, because it's led by stupid people. Talking of someone that's not stupid, let's move on to our final story, which is actually the story of the richest man in the world, South African-born Elon Musk. So Elon actually met the president in New York City, and both parties described it as a very good meeting. The president is quoting as having said, "I want you to come home and invest in your country." Now, what does he actually mean by that? Well, it's Starlink. It's because every other country around South Africa has got Starlink, apart from us. Now, ISPA, the Internet Services Providers Association, basically said they welcome the introduction of Starlink in South Africa so long as they comply with the rules. And you all know what those rules are. 30% BE ownership. Now, because of that 30% BE ownership, there hasn't actually been a license granted in 14 years. ICASA, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, basically says that nobody's applying to set up shop here because the regulations are a little bit too difficult. Many a time, if you're setting up something like a communication network, it's costing you billions. Nobody wants to give billions away in equity for reasons. So how exactly is Elon Musk going to do Starlink? Well, one suggestion is that perhaps Elon Starlink could avoid all the local legislation by working through an existing local company that already complies with all the legislation. And IOL seems to suggest that the company that is being put forward for that is MTN. Yeah, let's not forget, Ramaphosa has a previous association with MTN. It's almost like it's deliberate. Anyway, the government says that it's in continued talks with SpaceX about possibly getting Starlink here. In fact, it even speculated on how much the price could be, and it could be as much as 1,500 a month in rands. But considering the service and what it will do to local competition, many will probably say it's completely reasonable. Talking of local competition, companies such as Rhetoric and all the other providers of local LTE services are probably going to find that their market share disappears if Starlink does actually get a license in South Africa. And many of them say, yeah, we're not too worried about it so long as Elon is not exclusive in terms of the distribution rights that he has. Basically meaning that many of these individuals foresee a time when they are actually going to have to become a wholesaler or a reseller of Starlink. But given how the existing services aren't exactly performing very well, I can't see that being a bad thing. Anyway, these are all just my comments. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.